Hey everybody, Shane here, Shoebox Legends. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. This should be a relatively quick one. Just wanted to get on and kind of recap my experience at the Shriners Sports Card Show that took place in the Boston area this past weekend. A really large, twice a year show. It's around 300 tables, and I believe is generally acknowledged to be the largest sports card show in New England. I had only been once prior, maybe 15 years ago. I'm generally speaking not a huge card show guy. But the main reason I wanted to go this time and the main draw for me was the opportunity to meet up with a bunch of personalities from here on YouTube that I know to varying degrees, but had never met in person. So I'll try to keep this part brief. I do have a couple pickups that I made, which we'll get to in a moment. But some of the folks that I got to meet, I hope I don't omit anybody here. It was a little bit of a rush day, but I was able to meet up with Dan from Dan's Vintage Baseball PC and Sammy Thunder, two members of the Four Collectors Collective, I guess, so to speak, here on YouTube. And Dan gifted me that great Four Collectors card for my YouTube sports card collection. It was great meeting both of those individuals. Also, Mike from Junk Wax Hero, Keith from Lonely Basement Baseball Cards, great personality here on YouTube, and that was my first time meeting him as well. Alan, known as Boston Fan here on the platform, he and I have exchanged quite a bit of communication in the form of comments on each other's channels, emails, etc., but had never met Alan face-to-face either, so that was wonderful. My buddy Dom from Staven Sports Cards, he and I have met in the past. He's one of the few YouTubers I knew prior to the weekend, and we've even been to shows together before, but I had a great time walking the show floor with Dom, spent a lot of my time on the floor with him, really enjoy his company. Mark Hoyle, who I know doesn't have a channel here on YouTube, but is a frequent commenter and supporter and is known to many in the community, and is a fantastic Boston sports fan and collector. And I've known Mark since even before YouTube, my card blogging days. I've known him probably 20 years now, so it was great bumping into him. Who else? I met Ryan at History Through Cards, a channel that was not familiar to me, but I am now subscribed, and I've already checked out a couple of his videos. Had some great conversation with Ryan over lunch at the get-together afterwards. And then my buddy Adam from Splendid Sports. We've been friends for a few years now. I've done YouTube collaborations with Adam and collectively with our buddy Dylan as well. We text back and forth, and Adam now lives in my neck of the woods here up in New England. And so finally was able to meet him face to face, walk the floor, and even get a drink together. So I had a great time meeting you as well, Adam. And yeah, I think I'm probably forgetting somebody. I apologize profusely. Oh, you know what? I am forgetting somebody. Jake at Wax Pack Wisdom and his lovely wife, Abby. Jake, not only did I run into them on the show floor, but Jake put together or organized the after show event at a brewery down the street. So to all of those individuals and to anyone else who I forgot, it was absolutely wonderful interacting with all of you this weekend. Looking forward to seeing all of your recap videos and getting to know you better in the future. So with that out of the way, the show itself, I mentioned maybe briefly that I'm not a huge card show guy. Don't enjoy long lines, don't enjoy jockeying for position to look through boxes. And more than anything, I've been in the hobby for over 18 years now as an adult. I have a lot of the cards that I want when it comes to the golden era of vintage, you know, the 50s and 60s. And the ones that I'm still looking for, I'm incredibly particular in terms of centering, eye appeal, just finding that exact right example. And other than that, I tend to get into modern and hockey and really obscure things like buybacks and just stuff you don't find at shows too often. So I was a little bit skeptical that I was going to find much. I will say the show was extremely crowded on Saturday. There was a long line to get in. However, the line moved incredibly quickly. It took me about 10 minutes to get in the door. And even though it was mobbed in the entire time I was there, which was about 4 hours or so, I never felt claustrophobic. You could pretty easily get to all the showcases, take a look at what, you know, the dealers had available. There was plenty of room, you know, long, wide aisles. Never really was bumping into folks or feeling pressed into a corner or anything like that. It was a relatively relaxing experience given how crowded the place was. So that was a pleasant surprise. My, I guess, MO as somebody who's not very experienced with card shows is to kind of do one quick lap around, try to take a look at every table or as much as I can, just to see if anything sticks out to me, catches my eye. And then once I kind of have the full picture, I'll circle back around and maybe hope that some of those items that caught my eye are still available. In my case, I made only two pickups, one hockey card and one baseball card. And each of these were items that, did exactly that, just sort of caught my attention, being something out of the ordinary. The majority of cases were vintage baseball, and I don't think that's going to be a surprise to anybody. Some collectors did have some vintage hockey. There was a decent amount of vintage hockey, actually, a little bit of vintage football and a little bit of vintage basketball, and the occasional modern case or modern cards spread out in a case. But I would, if I had to guess, say 75 to 80% of the show was vintage baseball. But I found two cards that fall outside that realm that were both attractive to me. And the first is a direct tie to this Gordie Howe that we've been looking at in the background here as I kind of rambled through my intro. This is the first ever Topps hockey set produced back in 1954. And so as such, this is Gordie Howe's first ever Topps hockey card. And for those who aren't hockey fans, he is generally acknowledged as an all-time great. And there are some who say he is the greatest of all time. Wayne Gretzky is another name you hear, Bobby Orr. Whatever you think or whatever your personal opinion is, Gordie Howe is a top 5 NHL player in the history of the league. I don't think too many people can dispute that. And probably the game's biggest superstar throughout the 50s, 60s, and even into the 70s. And I found a wonderful modern card that is a throwback to this and affiliated with it. This is from the Topps Heritage Hockey release, when Topps used to have an NHL license. And it's a certified pack-issued autograph of Gordie Howe. So just like with the Heritage Baseball release, they did the same thing in hockey where they went back starting at the very first Topps set that they created, and they sort of recreated the release with, modern players on that vintage design, but also included some pack-issued autos of both current stars and retired stars. And this Gordie Howe has to have been maybe the best autograph that you could pull from the product. He even inscribed it Mr. Hockey, his nickname, which is wonderful. This is not a sticker. This is an on-card auto. This was pack-issued. It's got the certified autograph issue emblem here, the hologram on the back. So this was not like a redemption or anything like that. This came right out of a pack of Heritage. And yeah, to get an on-card auto of arguably the greatest hockey player of all time, especially where I had picked up the original only earlier this year after desiring it for really decades, this was a perfect card to pair up with that original. Found that on my first lap around, as I mentioned. The asking price on it, I don't even think was that crazy when you consider Gordie's place in the kind of history of the game and the fact that he's an all-time great. I think the seller had a $275 sticker on that, but after some negotiation, we were able to get that closer to $200. And to me, that was a no-brainer. I probably would have paid $275 even if he wouldn't have budged, but he was willing to work with me, which is, I guess, one of the advantages of buying at a card show. So did not expect that of all things, I would be leaving there with a on-card autographed hockey card out of that entire 300-table auditorium. But that's an absolute, just perfect card for the way that I collect. Something that's out of the box, or outside the box, kind of meaningful, and just, really a home run for my hockey card collection. I have a couple of other Gordie Howe autos, but nothing that approaches that one in terms of coolness. So that was probably the hallmark pickup of the show for me. But the other one on the baseball front was equally cool, and something that honestly I was even more surprised to find at a show, because these are just such rare unicorns. I don't really expect to encounter many of them, especially at a show that is vintage heavy like this one was. But it's a kind of a take on this 2018 Topps Ichiro. Now this one here is actually a buyback that I hadn't shown yet. I picked this up about a month ago from last year's advent calendars. But 2018, in addition to being a really important set in the Topps kind of 21st century run here, has a great design, notable rookies. Obviously, the Ohtani rookie card is in 2018, but also Juan Soto and Rafi Devers and others. So this is a really cool card. And this is the last card that Ichiro received in the flagship Topps set. In fact, he actually last played with the Marlins in 2017 and famously returned to the Mariners for the 2018 season. He has a Mariners card in 2018 Topps Update, but this card here is the last card in the base Topps flagship release. And what I was able to find, I found this relatively early on, maybe 5 minutes into walking the show floor. It was in the very first row. A seller who had I guess really this was sort of out of place. They had a lot of like vintage and a lot of modern football and just all kinds of random stuff. And this is one of the only modern baseball cards in their case. They had the printing plate, the magenta printing plate for that 2018 Topps Ichiro card, which is just absolutely amazing. This is my first like true Topps printing plate of Ichiro. These are not easy to find, especially of a player of this magnitude, and the Topps flagship set. You can see the back here. This is from Topps 2018 Series 1 baseball. And this printing plate is one of four. It's a one of one because it's the only magenta, but there's also a yellow, a black, and a cyan. There are always four printing plates, each one a one of one. And this is one of the plates that was used to produce this 2018 Topps Ichiro, his final flagship non-update Topps card. These I know aren't for everybody. I know printing plates are kind of a mixed bag in terms of popularity. I love them. I love their really tough nature, tracking these down, all of them being one of ones, and they're just not something you see all that often, to the point where, you know, I hopped on the Wi-Fi at the show and I was trying to see if like any Topps flagship Ichiro printing plate had even sold somewhat recently, just to get a rough idea of where I should be ballpark on this, but there hasn't been one that I'm aware of or that I could find that's sold in years. So I just was astounded that this existed at the show. And after making my first pass, which took me about maybe an hour and a half or so, that was the first card that I went back, even before the How, and grabbed. I was hoping it would still be there. Ended up paying $175 for that printing plate, which again, some of you may think is crazy, but I was really, really happy with that. And again, as someone who's not a big card show guy, I was fully expecting to leave there empty-handed and to just be able to go to the get-together, you know, have some lunch and a couple beers and some good conversation. But beyond that, I was able to make two incredible pickups to strengthen my collection. So it just goes to show you, even if you collect kind of outside the bounds of what the main focus of the show is, you can always potentially find something cool. And those two cards are incredibly meaningful and cards that I would not have found if I was sticking to buying online only. So it was a great experience. But again, the highlight for me was meeting all of those great individuals that I mentioned during the intro and others who I'm sure I forgot. One last big thanks to Jake over at Wax Pack Wisdom and his wife for locating the spot for the get-together afterwards and kind of organizing that, getting the text thread together. I really do mean it that was the highlight of the show for me. And if it wasn't for the opportunity to meet up with all those wonderful folks from the community, I'm not sure that I would have made the round trip drive up to the show. But that made it all worth it. And then getting those two cool cards was kind of the icing on the cake beyond that. So great meeting everybody. Everyone who watched this video, if you stuck it out through 13 minutes of my rambling, I truly appreciate it. Again, since I don't get to card shows very often, I wanted to get on here and just kind of summarize my experience. If you are in the area and considering attending the Shriners show in the future, I would highly recommend it. And if you are planning to do that, please reach out to me and let me know, because I'd be happy to drive up there, if for no other reason than to get a chance to converse with you. So that's a wrap for this one. Appreciate you tuning in. I'll be back soon, as you know, with some more content. And until then, enjoy the hobby, everybody. See ya.